Hello, my name's Steve Dickey, and welcome to the St. Francis County Ambulance District Training Center 2020 AHA Guideline Information Review and Instructor Expectations. So today in this course, we will discuss the expectations of the instructor, new instructor materials, completing the guideline updates, consequences of not completing those updates. What updates do you need to do? The virtual renewal process. The virtual course monitoring process. The new course paperwork. New e-card payment process. Traditional provider versus heart code courses. The pre-course self-assessment. The pre-course preparation, where to send the students to access that data, written exam versus heart code, the student into instructor ratios. Can I add BLS to that? Feedback devices. And finally, is there an app for that? Our expectations for the instructor. The 2020 Guideline Instructor Updates. Regardless of what discipline you teach, you must complete the 2020 Guideline Instructor Updates. On October the 12th, our training center sent an email to all of our instructors explaining there will be a new guideline update, and they were going to have a virtual release experience, and even the registration was sent. So now that link probably will not work, if you log into your instructor network, you can access those guideline updates if you already haven't done it. If you've already done the updates, you're just fine. If you have not completed those updates, then your e-cards have not been issued. If you haven't completed your updates and you submit a class now, your cards will not be issued. Once you have completed those updates and corrected the paperwork, or maybe even have to redo the entire course using 2020 guidelines, then the cards will be issued to the class. What updates should you have done? Well, the BLS instructor should do the 2020 AHA Guidelines Science and Service, the Heart Saver instructor update, and the BLS instructor update. These are all free. If you enroll into something and it's costing you as an instructor update, you've chose the wrong one. What you've done is you've chosen an essentials course, and that will cost you. You do not need to do that if you're a current instructor. Only new instructors are required to do the essentials. So ACLS instructors, again, once you've completed the AHA Guidelines Science and Service, you're good. The ACLS instructor update also needs to be completed. For PALS instructors, again, Science and Service, the PALS instructor update, and the PAIRS instructor update also must be done. Yes, every instructor must have a 2020 Guidelines instructor manual for every discipline that you teach. You can go to the Shop CPR website. Now, once you're at Shop CPR, you can simply browse the selections for whatever instructor material that you are in need of. You must use the new 2020 course paperwork for all of your classes. So, log into your instructor network, go to the discipline in which you teach, and you can access all of the new course paperwork. We're going to go over some of the course paperwork in a bit, but not in massive detail. Next, what you need to do after we're done here is go to Enrollware and update your Enrollware profile. Name, first name, last name, physical address, email address, phone number. Do not put multiple email addresses. Only one, the primary email address in which you are going to check regularly and good communications can happen. log into your instructor network profile and update it. So the virtual instructor renewal process. We have conducted a couple of virtual instructor renewals in which we'll set up a day. I'll send links out and we'll have a Zoom meeting and we'll go over all the instructor renewal parts. There's some new data that we're going to discuss in those classes, not so much this little mini class here we're doing, but the virtual instructor renewal process is available, but we don't know how long the American Heart Association is going to allow us to proceed with this. So until then, I would expect an instructor renewal to be virtual. Virtual course monitoring process is the same. We don't know how long this is going to exist. However, we have not done a virtual course monitoring process quite yet. And when it comes time for that, a set of instructions will be emailed to you. We'll probably have a couple of phone conversations. That way we're all set up for that day, have another Zoom meeting, and we'll watch you perform class as it goes. But more details will come on that as those are started. Electronic payment for e-cards. The Bill Me process is going away. If you're currently a Bill Me instructor, you need to contact Christy at khalter@sfcad.org and begin dialogue on how this transition is going to take place. Feedback devices. So this release here was released sometime before January 31st, 2019, and it explains that you're going to need a feedback device. That feedback device, to meet that minimum requirement, the device must measure and provide real-time audio feedback or visual feedback, or both, on compression, rate, and depth. Now, this particular guideline says on adult CPR. If you read the FAQs on pediatric CPR now, they do involve feedback devices. As you can see, in this January 11th, 2021 training release for 2020 PALS provider courses, instructor-led, it says, what are the key differences between 2015 guidelines and the 2020 guideline versions of PALS provider courses? The new PALS course includes the following changes. In the PALS provider course is achieving a minimal chest compression fraction of 81% for more objective practice and testing. This allows everyone to move from a perception of how they did to actually measures how they performed. This requires scenarios to be run in real time so that CCF can be measured, coupled with a required feedback device for increased CPR quality. So these feedback requirements will affect any class teaching adult, child, or infant CPR. 2020 course paperwork review. So let's start with HeartSaver. HeartSaver has been divided up into several different parts, and we're going to try to touch base on each one of those. First is the HeartSaver CPR AED instructor-led training. This course is geared toward adult CPR and adult CPR only. Adult HeartSaver CPR AED blended course, which is an version of the same course, except they take an online portion and then they come to a skills test for just adult CPR. HeartSaver First Aid and CPR instructor-led training. Again, geared toward adults, CPR and AED. And there is a blended version of the First Aid and CPR as well for adults. HeartSaver Total instructor-led training. This is an in-person class that is geared toward meeting an OSHA standard for First Aid and CPR. There is also a HeartSaver Total blended. The HeartSaver Office instructor-led training geared toward the office professional. HeartSaver Educator is a class geared toward anyone working in a school system. These Heart Saver CPR classes for the adult require the adult check sheet, and if first aid is a component, it requires a first aid skills checklist. And each of these would either get a Heart Saver CPR AED card or a Heart Saver First Aid CPR card. If any option is chosen, like total or a child or an infant were added, those options would also be indicated on the card. Heart Saver Pediatric First Aid and CPR and AED. This is an instructor-led course. There is also a blended version. There are also several other types of versions, like babysitter and water safety. Each class that involves the CPR component gets for pediatric of course, gets the child and infant skills check sheets. If an instructor-led course was done and involved the first aid component, then they will also get the first aid check sheet. The provider card for Heart Saver Pediatric looks just like this, and any option would also be mentioned on the card as well. Heart Saver for K-12 schools. This is a form of Heart Saver geared toward the graduating senior, or you could use it as a type of Heart Saver for the school district, like the educator. And for this particular Heart Saver course, the card color has changed to a green to signify it being for the school system. BLS, Basic Life Support. Heart Code BLS, where they take all of their cognitive portions online and you perform skills testing. The checklists that are required for BLS are the adult and the infant forms. The Heart Code BLS certificate is what is required of your student when they come to class. They must present this certificate to you before you can continue. They can either email it to you, bring a printed copy, whatever the case may be, but the entire certificate must be visible. The certificate number in the bottom left corner is what will replace the score in Enrollware. When we do your instructor update, we'll actually change the option to accept the certificate and not just a blanket score. And the BLS card, as always, is electronic and appears as such. ACLS. ACLS is divided into several different types as well. The ACLS course, the ACLS update course, the ACLS traditional course, and the ACLS traditional update course, and Heart Code ACLS. So, the ACLS course, along with the ACLS update course, are versions of ACLS that requires that each student complete the ACLS pre-course self-assessment and a series of 13 videos. This is actually called the Advanced Cardiovascular Life Support Pre-Course Preparation. This course can be found at the e-learning site as well. Once at the e-learning site, the student will choose Courses, Advanced Cardiovascular Life Support, and they will scroll down to the ACLS Pre-Course Self-Assessment and Pre-Course Work. They'll click on the Launch This Course, and it will take them to the course that they need to complete. This is required for them to do for these two type classes. This particular version of the pre-course preparation is not used for ACLS traditional courses. This certificate must be presented by each student at the beginning of the class. It must be the certificate. It cannot be the paper printed item with the bars. It must be the certificate to be presented to you, and it must be included into the paperwork for each student in which you upload into Enrollware. The certificate looks similar to this, where they will have a completed date and certificate number. There's no place to put this certificate number as a score, but it does need to be included in the course paperwork. The ACLS traditional course and its ACLS update traditional course. This is a version that only the ACLS pre-course self-assessment is required to be completed by the student. And this particular assessment is called the Advanced Cardiovascular Life Support Pre-Course Self-Assessment and can be found at the e-learning site as well. So once your traditional students are at the e-learning site, courses, ACLS, and they will scroll down to the pre-course self-assessment. Now, this pre-course self-assessment, like the other, must be presented by the student at the beginning of the class. During this instructor-led course, the videos will be shown during class. HeartCode ACLS is a blended learning version of ACLS that combines online learning and on-site skills practice and testing. The student should present that HeartCode certificate to you on the day of their skills evaluation, or they can email it to you prior to that. But the HeartCode ACLS students are only required to present the HeartCode certificate to you on the day that they are going to have their skills evaluated. This is a HeartCode ACLS online portion certificate. The certificate number at the bottom left corner is what should go into Enrollware as their score. The ACLS course roster. So let's look at one. Once you've logged into your AHA Instructor Network, you're going to go to Courses. So the roster is found right here. It is completely downloadable and even fillable from the website. Again, you're going to choose whatever course you are teaching. Just remember, the ACLS course and ACLS traditional courses are both 2-day courses. The update courses for each are a single day, and HeartCode is also a single day. The instructor name, your ID, and expiration are a must. You have to have those on every course roster. The training center name should be on there along with our training center ID. The training center, the training site name, address, and city, state, and zip does not need to be placed because we do not have training sites. However, you do need to put the course locations. Wherever you're teaching this class, that location, a generic name of the business or location is acceptable. Again, the start time and date, the end time and date, the hours of instruction, the number of cards you're going to be issuing, the student to mannequin ratio, and the date to be issued. We're going to talk about exact course length, the ratios, and start times and end dates in just a few seconds. And we'll also talk about the instructor student mannequin ratio here. The issued date of the cards, just simply put the month and the year in which you taught the class. If you have an additional instructor, their name and instructor number must go here, and their expiration date. Remember to sign your roster, put the date. You have to have a face sheet and roster from the American Heart Association. The approved version for any discipline you're teaching must be completed. The Enrollware versions do not count any longer. You have to have an AHA approved course roster and face sheet. So this would be the roster portion. On this, the date, the course title, your instructor name, and your number also needs to go on there. The roster portion is where the student should write their name and sign under it, or even place their email address and their mailing address and phone number if you would like to enter that information. You can put their information in here beforehand if you would like, but when they show up, they need to be signing under that, verifying that's their name and email address that you put there. So the PSA score would be that certificate. Even if they do the pre-course work, you're still going to have a score to place in that area. When they're finally done with the class, you're going to put a C for complete and the score of their written exam. In remediation, if you have to remediate a student, simply put the date and then the score. And no matter what they scored the second time, it's 84R. 84 being the minimum score percentage, and R standing for remediation. So the ACLS course matrix, there's not one made for ACLS or any discipline that I can currently find that is of the 2020 guidelines. So I kind of made one myself, and I'll share it with you. This is the ACLS course matrix that I actually come up with. It shows you what provider card is going to be using. So the student to instructor ratio, for one instructor, you can do up to 6 students, and you don't have to add any time. The appropriate time for an initial course is actually 10 hours and 15 minutes up to 11, depending on breaks and optional lessons. The renewal course for up to 6 students is between 6 and 7 hours, and in any course, the skills to practice ratio for student to instructor is 4:1, and the skills testing is 8:1. So let's talk about we want to add a 7th or an 8th student. You have to add 80 minutes to the original course length. You cannot do 9 students as an ACLS instructor, a single ACLS instructor. You must have a second instructor at that point. If you have 9 students or more, again, you have to have a second instructor, and that time for overall class actually goes back to the 6:1 ratio. The same rules apply for the renewals. Each renewal course also has its specific time. So let's go over in more detail the ACLS course skills check sheets. So again, from your instructor network login under ACLS, you will have the adult high quality BLS check sheet. It has to be the ACLS version. It cannot be the BLS version. Each box must be checked. Your initials, instructor number, date, and pass needs to be on this particular skill sheet. The airway management, again, student name, the date, and each needs to have its check along with the other required information at the bottom there. The official Megacode testing check lists are actually here, and these are the ones that need to be with each student with whatever scenario that they used. So the BLS e-card and the ACLS courses, you can provide a BLS card to the ACLS student. There are some prerequisites. BLS e-cards and ACLS requirements. You can only provide the ACLS student with a renewal BLS card. You cannot provide this option to those who have not ever received a BLS e-card and or who do not meet the following requirements. You must adjust the course agenda to include the additional time for BLS skills practice and testing of child and infant CPR, choking, and the use of a bag valve mask. You must complete a BLS update or heart code roster. Each student must have, in addition to their ACLS CPR forms, a BLS course, adult and infant CPR and AED checklists. You must be a current BLS instructor or have a current BLS instructor with you to test and administer the exam. The student must provide their current BLS card, a printed copy. They also can provide you with a digital version, that's fine, and have a 2020 BLS course manual with them on class day. Each student receiving their BLS card must complete the November 9th, 2020 version of the BLS exam, A or B, and they must pass with an 84% in addition to their ACLS exam. ACLS written exam. The ACLS written exam is for all instructor-led courses. Only advanced cardiovascular life support exam A or B, the November 9th, 2020 versions are acceptable. They have to pass with an 84%. The written exam is not required for heart code ACLS. So what's the ACLS e-card look like? I'm sure you've seen it. PALS. PALS is divided into several different types. PALS course, PALS update course, PALS traditional course, PALS traditional update course, and Heart Code PALS. PALS course and the PALS update course are versions of an instructor-led PALS where you would not need to play the videos during class. This is designed so that you can spend more time on PALS skills. So the pre-course work that the student's responsible for would involve a series of videos and the pre-course self-assessment. So the student must complete this pre-course self-assessment, pass with a 70 after watching a series of videos. They must print this certificate of completion and present it to you on the day of class. Now, when you scan your paperwork, this pre-course certificate must be scanned and added into that paperwork. The PALS traditional course and the PALS traditional update. This version of an instructor-led PALS course involves you watching all of the videos in class like we have conducted PALS in the past. The pre-course self-assessment that they have to complete, again, they have to complete it with a 70% and it needs to be presented. Heart Code PALS is a blended learning version of PALS where they will do all their cognitive parts online and then they schedule their skills testing with you. The student will be given or will have the opportunity to print a Heart Code PALS certificate, and they must bring this to you on the day of their skills evaluation, and of course it's put with their paperwork. This is an example of the PALS Heart Code certificate. At the bottom left corner, where the certificate number would appear, is what would go into Enrollware in the score. So those pre-course requirements, let's talk a little more about those pre-course requirements. This is an example of the Pediatric Advanced Life Support Pre-Course Self-Assessment Certificate. This needs to be presented to you by the student and then scanned with all your paperwork. The course preparation, this is an example of that certificate, and it would be used for the PALS course and the PALS update course. So these pre-course requirements, where do they find them? Well, let's go. You find them at the elearning.org. They'll choose courses, the PALS, and they'll come down here, and depending on what class they're doing, they'll either choose the PALS pre-course self-assessment and pre-course work or the PALS course self-assessment. Once they have registered for these free courses, they'll simply access this information from their active list and they will start their process. Once they're done with the required assessment and coursework, they must complete the survey in order to get the certificate. The PALS roster. Once you've logged into your AHA network site, you're going to choose PALS, the guideline for instructor resources, and you're going to choose the roster. This roster opens in a HTML PDF. It can be downloaded to your computer. It is still fillable at that point, and you can complete all the information on this roster. Each roster is required for class. The face sheet and the roster, the front and the back. The Enrollware rosters are no longer acceptable. So with this particular roster, you're going to choose what class you're conducting, your name, your ID number, your expiration date, and the training center name and the training center number must be entered. The training site name, address, city, state, and zip do not need to be entered because we do not have training sites. What you will need to complete is just the course location. and simply type the name of the place that you are conducting class. The course date and time, start date and time, the end date and time, total hours, and student to mannequin ratio we'll discuss in more detail in a few moments. But those 4 things must be completed, along with the number of cards issued and then the date the cards were issued. Simply put the month and the year in which you taught the class. If you have a second instructor teaching with you, their name would go here along with their number and then their card expiration date. Don't forget to sign your rosters and then simply the dates of the class year. So the second part to this course roster, you're going to enter the date, the course title, your name, your instructor number as well. So when it comes to the names of the students, the names can be printed and their emails can already be there. However, when they come into class, they have to sign this roster. If this information is not entered on this roster, then they must write their name and email address. The mailing address and telephone number, that's up to you whether you want that information or not. It's not completely required. Where it says PSA score, you are actually going to put their pre-course self-assessment or pre-course work certificate number right in here. You're simply at the end, once they've completed class, you're going to place a letter C for complete, or you can write the word complete, and then you're going to enter the exam percentage they scored. For remediation, and remediation we'll talk a lot about in your instructor renewals when you come due, you're simply going to put the date and the score 84R, no matter if they've taken version B or not. So PALS course matrix. I have not seen an AHA course matrix, so I made us one. So I have a course matrix for both the PALS course and the Heart Code course, which will all be emailed to every instructor. So the PALS course, there's a lot of information on here, and we're going to go at it kind of different. However, we do have student to instructor ratios, we have course times, skills practice ratios, and skills testing ratios, along with some other pre-course work, skills, and then our BLS option, but we'll talk more about that in a minute. Okay, let's talk specifically about times. This is one of the biggest things that as an instructor I always worried about, was how much time needs to be on the roster, how much time should I be spending with certain things. So using a 6-to-1 ratio, 1 instructor, 6 students, it's 10 hours 45 minutes for the initial course. A renewal course is 8 hours 5 minutes. Every time we add a student, we have to add 80 minutes to our overall time. So we would add 80 minutes to our 6-to-1, which brings it to 12 hours and 5 minutes. And the same for the renewal. When you add the 8th student, you add another 80 minutes. But when you get to that 9th student, you have to have a second instructor. And then your time reverts back to the 6-to-1 ratio. Just remember, we can't teach 9 students any longer with ACLS or PALS. You can only teach 8 as a single instructor. With the 9th, you have to add that second instructor. And the max skills testing ratio for 1 instructor is 8 students, 1 instructor. The PALS course skills checklists, those too can be found at your AHA instructor network. The child CPR and AED skills check sheet, remember, needs to be completed for every student. The infant skills check sheet, still a 2-pager. The airway management skills check sheet. Rhythm disturbances. Vascular access. And your testing scenario checklists are actually in another box. So this would be the PEA assistally scenario, and the complete list of those would all be right here. So in addition to every single checklist that we just went through, they must also complete 1 cardiac and 1 respiratory or shock. So they have to have 2 case scenarios tested along with each one of those skills check sheets that we just went over. So yes, you can get a BLS card with a PALS course. However, it can only be a renewal course. Here are some requirements. You can only provide that PALS student with a renewal card. You cannot provide this option to those who have never received a BLS card. Now, someone who's never received a BLS card can be in a PALS class. However, you cannot issue them a card since they've never been a BLS provider before. You must adjust the course agenda time to account for the additional practice and testing of all the BLS skills that are missed in PALS. You must also complete a BLS roster, whether it's an update course or a heart code. In addition to the PALS CPR forms, the BLS CPR forms must be complete, and you must be a BLS instructor or have a BLS instructor with you so that they can provide the exam and test skills. So one of the other caveats to this is the student must provide their current BLS card, a printed copy or a digital copy, to you, and that must also be in the course paperwork when you scan and upload it. And they also have to have a 2020 BLS course manual with them on class day. Each student receiving their BLS card must complete the current version of the BLS exam, which is the November 9th, 2020 exam, and they must pass that with an 84, in addition to their PALS exam, which they have to pass with an 84% as well. Now, if your PALS student completed heart code BLS, if they present that heart code BLS certificate to you, then they do not need to take an exam and they can have their skills evaluated by that BLS instructor. The PALS written exam. The PALS written exam is for all instructor-led courses. Only the current version, the November 9th, 2020 version of PALS exam A or B is acceptable. Again, minimum passing score of 84%. However, the written exam is not required for heart code PALS. PALS e-card. The PALS e-card, again, is the same as it has been for years now, as it's an electronic version.